Shrimada. It describes him sitting in a tank on the golf course, looking up at Cemetery Hill, providing covering fire for the Ichikawa battalion to rush up Sime Road, cross Lorney Road, and then make their way onto the temple. And it's quite a nice description because it gives you a good feeling for what it must have been like to fight in this action at night. It says, "Charge!" shouted the infantry battalion commander in a dignified voice, who had been observing the effect of the tank offensive without even a blink of an eye. His infantrymen ran down the ridgeline like fleeing rabbits, every man wishing to be the first, fanned out as soon as they crossed the bridge, and that's on the golf course, and disappeared into the forest by the temple as if absorbed by it. So these boys were like running across the road and disappearing into this kind of terrain. From the tank's positions, from Shrimada's position, it was almost as if they disappeared off the face of the earth. I had the tanks continue to fire while I kept an eye on the hill beyond the forest. Eerie darkness and a bottomless depth hung over the forest. Our forces that had just been absorbed into the darkness did not surface again for a long time, and then, as soon as we saw the company commander waving his sword above him and running up towards the crest of the hill. So it's almost they've come into the forest, they've moved up, and suddenly they break through onto the clearing on the top where the temple was, and Shrimada can see from his tanks that the attack had been successful. He also describes in the same passage the sound of firing, the staccato sound of the Brens that the Suffolks were armed with, firing and then stopping as if like they'd been overrun, they'd been taken out, and then this eerie silence coming across the scene again. So we have a picture, thanks to Shrimada, of fighting in this terrain. So what we know of the attack by the 3rd Battalion of the 11th Regiment, Ichikawa, they came up Sime Road, smashed their way across the Lorney Road defences, and then made their way to the only visible point, bearing in mind this is at night, under fire, the main point which they could gather, and that was on their maps said there was a temple complex, a temple which served the graveyard. And that's actually in this vicinity somewhere, not quite sure where. And so that was the focus for their attack. So all these dispersed elements of the Japanese come streaming across the road, and they're all heading uphill towards this one focal point. And from there they could then announce the attack was successful. They would put up their flares, flash their signal lights back along to Sime Road to where the tanks were waiting for them, saying we've cleared the hill and you're all right to carry on with your attack. It took them no less than 20 minutes to get up to this point from Sime Road.